Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, 5 lines from the top. We learned previously a machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, that if a person was Shabbos Babikas, he made Shabbos on the onset of Shabbos, he was in an open field, in an open area. And then Nachum came, and then they surrounded him with machitzas on Shabbos. So therefore they created a Rishus HaYachid. So therefore, in terms of carrying, in terms of the Haitzah or Havora, etc., the entire area is considered to be Rishus HaYachid because it has mechitzas. However, in terms of the Tchum, he's restricted to his original Tchum, the 2,000 amas that he had on the onset of Shabbos. The fact that the mechitzas are created now on Shabbos doesn't change his Tchum that was created at the onset of Shabbos. So therefore, he's now in an enclosed area. He can walk part of the way, not the entire closure, because we're talking where the 2,000 amas ended, somewhere in the middle of this bika. He can't walk the whole area. The question is, can he throw from the area that he can walk to the other area? So that was the machlokes. And the shaila was, can he throw or not? Do we say that we're geyser if he can throw from one area to the next? Now they're all Rishus HaYachid, so if we allow him to throw from one area to the next, perhaps then he'll go and look for his object, and he'll go and walk into that other area and be over and go past his tchum. So Rav Huna said he could be metaltel only a dalet amas. He can't be metaltel through the area of Zrika, of the whole area rather of the Bika. We are geyser that Shema Yimshach, maybe he'll go after his chayvus. Rav Nachman said he can throw. The whole area is considered Rishus HaYachid. We're not geyser that he'll go and search for his object and go walk beyond his tchum, but Rav Huna says we are geyser. So now, a related discussion. So Zok the Gemara Omer of Huna Hayamayded, if a person was measuring his alpaim amas, he was measuring alpaim amas that he had on his Malkam Shvis on the onset of Shabbos, he's measuring it, and now the end of the 2,000 amas comes and it ends, and Kol Samidasa bechatzi chatzer. It ends up in a chatzer, in a courtyard, in the middle of the chatzer. So therefore, part of the chatzer is within his tchum, and the other part of the chatzer is outside his tchum. It's similar to the case that we just discussed. Similar to the case of the bika. So, he only has half the chatzer. He can't walk into the entire chatzer because it's beyond his alpayim mama. More pshita, of course. The other half of the chatzer is past his 2,000 amas. Aim of the Gemara says, Yesh lo chatzi chatzer. What he means to say is, the chiddush is that he has a chatzi chatzer. That he can walk within the part of the chatzer which is within his alpayim mama. Frag the Gemara, hanami pshita. Well, that's also pashut. Why should we say that he can't walk in the part of the courtyard which is within his tchum, which was within his 2,000 amas? Why should that be also? Nobody said in the case of the bika that it's also to walk within the area of his tchum. The issue was, can he throw outside that into the other part of the bika, which is enclosed by mechitzas, which is a Rishus HaYachid? Can he throw into the other half? But nobody said that you can't walk within the half of what's in your tchum. So Gemara says, no. Here we have to tell me this. This is a chiddush. You might think if we let you walk within the half of the chatzer, which is in your tchum, you might come to be metaltal and carry in the area beyond your tchum. You might come to carry there, you might even come to walk over there, but you might come to carry over there. And that area is outside the tchum. You might come to carry there. So Kamash Malan, then no, we're not geyser. Nevertheless, it is mutter to walk within that part of the chasa which is within your tchum, and we're not geyser that you might walk outside the tchum, you might carry outside the tchum. Rishayim are bothered, but why should we have this havamin over here? Why should we think over here that you'll carry outside the tchum more than the case that we had by the bika? So Rashi explains, which is elaborated on by the Rashba, that in a chaser it's very common to have articles lying around, and people are carrying their items, they're carrying their personal items. They're carrying these articles, and it's very common to be carrying them and walking around. Over here, there's more of a reason to be geyser that a person would pick up these items and carry them all around the chaser. Mashenkin and a bika, it's not a place where people are living over there. There's less of a concern. So you might have thought over here that we would be geyser kamash malan. Amar Rav Nachman, Moideli Huna, Rav Nachman says that even though Rav Huna argues with me on the case of the bika, can you throw from one side of the bika to the other side of the bika? But he's maida that hayamaida the bar, that if a person was measuring his 2,000 amas, it calls me dasal sasa tikra, and he came into a house that one of the walls fell down, so it's enclosed by three sides. But one side is open, and he comes to his 2,000 amas, comes to the edge of the roof, the front of the house. Then mutar l'taltal b'chol habayis. It's mutar to throw things, to be metaltal, to carry things by means of throwing into the entire house. Now, in the case of the bika, Rav Huna says it's also to throw into the other side of the bika. Shemi yimshach, he might go and chase after them, he might want to retrieve them. But here, Rav Nachman says Rav Huna would be moided to me. Why is that? My time because the edge of the roof, it presses down. Meaning you have a clear line of demarcation. A person can clearly see, this is where the tchum ends, and therefore he knows to stop and not go forward. In a bika, it's wide open. There's no demarcation, there's no line that will remind him that you cannot go beyond this line and carry beyond. So therefore, there Rav Huna answers, but here he would be mighty. Amar Rav Huna brings Rav Nosson Kitanai. Let's say this machlekes of Rav Huna and Rav Nachman is the same machlekes that we have in the Mishnah. Because what do we learn in the Mishnah? It says if he was forcibly taken to another city, and he was put into a pen or a corral, and put into an enclosed area, they say he can walk through the entire area. Now, even though the basic din is that if he's taken outside his tchum, he only has dalet amas, but over here they consider the entire enclosure, the entire closed area, to be as dalet amas. So therefore, they say he can walk throughout the whole area. But they argue and they say no, he only has dalet amas. We don't treat the whole area as one area of dalet amas. So my love, would we not say the following? They say that you can walk through the whole area. So what do you see from here? They're not geyser in this case that if we allow you to walk within this entire enclosure, within this entire enclosed area, similarly, you'll come to walk within the entire case of the bika, that you'll walk within the whole area of the bika. Now, the area of the bika, you can't walk within the whole area of the bika because your alpine mama was ended in the middle of the bika, and you weren't forcibly taken to that area. And so therefore we say that in that case, everyone agrees you can't walk within the whole bika. So you might have said that if we allow you to walk within the whole dir of Sire, we should be geyser out the bika, but we're not. So we're not geyser with that. And you see that we're not geyser walking within the entire pen and corral. We're not geyser the dir of Sire out to the case of bika. So tiltul out to hilach loy geyser. And similarly, they would not be geyser that if in the bika we allow you to throw within the entire bika, that you'll come to walk within the entire bika. So that's a shita of Rav Nachman. The Yeshua v'kivaim, they say en lo el arba amas. They say only has dalet amas. Why is that? Why do they say that he can only walk within the corral and the pen dir sire only dalet amas? Must be the gaza hilach hadir sire hatilach bika. Because why shouldn't we consider it's an enclosure? Why shouldn't we consider it all Dalet Amas? Must be because they're geyser onto the case of Bika. Umene Hilach Hati Hilach geyser, and if they're geyser Hilach Hati Hilach, Tilto Hatu Hilach, Nami geyser. So similarly, like Rav Huna, they would be geyser that if you're allowed to throw with the entire Bika, if you're allowed to be metaltal throughout the entire Bika, you'll come to walk on the entire Bika. So should we not say that Rav Nachman Rav Huna is really the Machlekes Tanaim? The Gemara says no. Not necessarily, me might. Dilma Kilo goes Rabban Wali Rabbalas Ben Razaya, Hiloch Sierra Deer Ata Hiloch Bika. Where are they not guys Rabban Wali Rabbalas Ben Razaya walking throughout the entire corral or pen that they're not geyser onto the case of Bika? Hanimila Hossam. Why are they not geyser? Because Shnei Mekayim. Because they're two separate places. One is a Dir Vasayar, one is a Bika. They're two separate, clearly different places. Aval Tiltu Ata Hilach, but in the case of Tiltu Ata Hilach, if we allow in this Bika, it's this one Bika, if we allow it within the same place that you're allowed to throw with the entire area, then perhaps there would be geyser that you might walk within the entire area. Aval Tiltu Ata Hilach, the Mokim Echaru, Hachiname, the geyser, perhaps there would be geyser. So maybe they would agree to Rav Huna. We're afraid, like Rav Huna says, that he might go and chase after his object and walk through the entire area. And they also, how do you say necessarily that the reason that they answered is because of like hold like Rav Huna, that the geyser, that he no, maybe they can hold like Rav Nachman, and maybe it's in the Bika, they would allow you to throw within the entire Bika. So what's the reason that they answer it by the Dir V'Sayar? Perhaps because they hold Ki Amrin Kol Abayis Kula Ka'arba Amas Domi. Where do we say that we treat an entire enclosure like Dalet Amas, and therefore if your tchum is within an enclosure, you can walk through the whole area? Perhaps Perhaps that's only where you're within that enclosure on the onset of Shabbos. But in this case over here, he wasn't within the enclosure on the onset of Shabbos. He was outside the enclosure, and his chum was outside the enclosure. His alpine mama ended outside the enclosure. They brought him, they were ma'anis him, they brought him to this enclosure during the Shabbos. So perhaps that they hold me'ikr at the end, not exer, it's me'ikr. You can't consider this all to be Dalet Amas because it was not his Mokum Shvisa on the onset of Shabbos. Where do we say an entire enclosed area is Dalet Amas? That's where it was Mokum Shvisa on the onset of Shabbos, but that's not the case over here. So perhaps this has no relevance to the Machlokes of Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. Now we had in the Mishnah, we had the Machlokes between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, when we had the Machlokes Lagabe, the case of Dir V'Sayar. We also had the case by these four Tanoim. We had the Machlokes with the case of the Sfina. The other Machlokes we had was that they were in the ship, and they were in a ship on the onset of Shabbos, and now during the course of the Shabbos, the ship traveled and it was beyond their tchum. It was beyond their alpine mama that was established at the onset of Shabbos. So Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar said that you can walk through the entire area. They consider it to be one area of Dalet Amas. And Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Kiva, they said no, you can only carry Dalet Amas. So Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, they held that Mahal was cooling, that they said you can walk through the entire area of the ship. But the Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Kiva said no, only Dalet Amas. So Amarav, he said, Hilchsak Rabbi Gamliel b'der v'sarasina. He said that the halachas like Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah in all of these cases. Shmuel Amar Hilchsak Rabbi Gamliel b'sfina. He agrees that the halachas like Rabbi Gamliel in the case of the sfina, avol b'dir v'sayar aloi, but not in the case of the dir v'sayar. The Kuli Alma Mias Halach Sfina, but everyone agrees that the halach is like a by Sfina, that you can walk through the whole area of the Sfina, even if the Sfina, the ship, is traveling beyond the Alpine Mama that was established at the onset of Shabbos. My time, and what's the reason? Amar Rabba, he says, Hoil Vishavas, Babar Mechitzas, Mi Bai Jay. He says, since he was within this enclosed area on the onset of Shabbos, this enclosed area, this entire enclosed area, is considered to be one area of Dalet Amos. So therefore, it's all Dalet Amos, and therefore he can walk through the whole area. Rav Zera Amar Hoil Sfina Noitlosa Mitchilas Arba Umenachasa B'Seif Arba. No, Rav Zera says a different shot. He says you're not really traveling beyond Dalet Amos, because if the Sfina is moving, so a person always has Dalet Amos. Even if it's beyond his Tchum, he always has Dalet Amos. If the Sfina is traveling, so he has, at this point, he has Dalet Amos. As the ship moves, then he's taken to another place. The ship is moving him to a place, Dalet Amos, which is beyond his original Dalet Amos, so he has a new Dalet Amos. So he always has a series of Dalet Amos, because the ship is in constant motion, and since it's in constant motion, it's always taking him outside his Dalet Amos, and every area outside of Dalet Amos that it takes him to, he has a new area of Dalet Amos, because even if a person is outside his Chum, he always has a Malkum Shvisa, he always has Dalet Amos. So therefore, he always has a place of Dalet Amos which he can walk. It's a constant series and sequence of places of Dalet Amos, and therefore, he can walk in the entire Sfina. Not because the Sfina is considered like one area of Dalet Amos, but because every new place that the ship takes him to, he has Dalet Amos from that point. So he always has Dalet Amos that he can walk. He can always walk. He can always keep going. So we'll see what the nafkamina is. My Beinaya, what's the difference? Well, according to the first pshat, according to Rabbah, the only reason is because it's an enclosed area. And we consider that enclosure, the entire, to be one area of Dalet Amos. Well, if the walls now have got diminished and they're lower than the 10 tefachim, lower than the requisite height, you don't have an enclosure anymore, then it's not considered one area of Dalet Amos. You would not be able to walk throughout the whole Sfina, according to Rabbah. Rabbi Gamliel would say in that case you can't, but according to Rav Zera, you could. According to Rav Zera, it's not dependent on the enclosure. Inami b'kaifetz misfina l'sfina, or alternatively, a person jumps from one ship to another. Now, according to Rabbah, he can't walk the entire area of the second ship because he was not shavis in the avir of those mechitzas on the onset of Shabbos. He was in the first ship on the onset of Shabbos. The second ship, he wasn't. So that whole enclosure for him is not considered Dalet Amos. But according to Rav Zera, where the point is that the ship is in constant motion, and therefore, every point that he's at, he has Dalet Amos. So, and he has, therefore, constantly, he has Dalet Amos. Every time he walks Dalet Amos, he has a new Dalet Amos from that place. So, therefore, it doesn't make a difference if he jumps to another ship. He comes to another ship, he has Dalet Amos. As it's moving, he keeps having Dalet Amos. So that's enough to me of Rabbi Zera. My time of Rabba, why doesn't he agree to Rabba? Amalach, he said, because mechitzas lavrech ma'im asuyas. Over here, we don't consider this to be an enclosure where we say the entire enclosed area has Dalet Amos. Yes, I agree with you in a house, but not in the case of the Sfina, because in the case of the Sfina, the walls of the ship are not made for privacy, to be an enclosure for dwelling per se. The primary function of those walls is to keep the water out, is to protect it and so be able to travel through the water. Therefore, these are not considered to be mechitzas of an enclosure that we would consider the interior area to be one area of Dalet Amos. So in this case, by a Sfina, it's not like a house, and we would not consider that all Dalet Amos and say, Hoil v'shavas b'avar mechitzas b'ayim, it's Dalet Amos. And for Rabba, my time Lamar of Zera, why doesn't he agree with the Zera that since it's in constant motion, he always has Dalet Amos? He says he does agree with that. But Mahalechas Kol Yamalei Pligi, if it's traveling, if it's moving, yes, everyone agrees. There's no Machlekes on that. And everyone would agree with that he has that whole area. And Rishu would also agree. Ki pligi b'shalda, the whole machlekes between them is when it's stationary, when it's not traveling. That's where the machlekes is. Otherwise, if it's in constant motion, everybody would agree. So the machlekes is where it's stationary. So what's the reason that Rabbi Gamliel is matter when it's stationary? It's